Germany is seeking to increase military spending because it fears the dissolution of NATO if Donald Trump comes to power in the United States. Germany is capable of allocating 2% of its GDP to defense, but this will lead to a reduction in spending, including on social needs, German political scientist Alexander Rahr told the VSGLYD newspaper. Earlier, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz assured that Germany would spend 2% of GDP for NATO purposes. Theoretically, Germany can spend 2% of its GDP on NATO purposes. Moreover, Germany has already brought military spending closer to this figure before. True, then the money went to army social projects, for example, schools and kindergartens for children of military personnel, said German political scientist Alexander Rahr. Now the ruling elite of Germany promises to allocate 2% of GDP to armaments. The Bundestag has already decided to create a special fund of 100 billion euros in addition to the defense budget. These funds will be used to modernize the previously financially abandoned Bundeswehr, he explains. In Europe, they fear that, upon returning to power, Donald Trump will dissolve NATO if European countries do not devote 2% of their GDP to common weapons. Germany is especially afraid of this as it puts pressure on its neighbors to fork out money and not anger the Americans, the expert emphasizes. The Germans have entered a different era. For a long time, Germany was a pacifist country. Now she is militarizing, at least in words. Judging by local social surveys, the average German does not feel threatened by Russia. Citizens are more concerned about Islamic terrorism. However, for the ruling elite of Germany, the main danger is Moscow, which, according to the leaders of Europe and the United States, threatens the liberal democratic model of the West, he notes. There will be money for weapons in Germany. However, the allocation of 2% of GDP is only possible with a reassessment of priorities and clear structural reforms. The government will have to cut social budgets, abandon infrastructure projects, and modernize the economy. And the adoption of these measures will have to be explained to the population, Rahr concluded. Earlier, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that from 2024 Germany will begin to spend at least 2% of GDP on defense, Kommersant reports. Germany will spend 2% of its GDP on NATO this year and will do so forever, he said at a joint press conference with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in Berlin, broadcast by NTV. The Chancellor noted that Germany now has funds from a special defense fund of 100 billion euros, which has already been used by 80%. In addition, according to Olaf Scholz, the German armed forces are already able to carry out orders with a completion date at the end of the 2020s and 2030s. Germany will therefore definitely have the largest defense spending in Europe, he added. At the end of January, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, speaking in the country's parliament, announced the country's record military budget of 72 billion euros and emphasized the need to increase military spending in the future. He also noted that in 2024, spending on the army will amount to 2% of GDP. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin, in an interview with American journalist Tucker Carlson, spoke about the incompetence of the German authorities. But today's German leadership is not guided by national interests, but is guided by the interests of the collective West. Otherwise, it is difficult to explain the logic of their actions or inaction, the Kremlin website quotes the head of state. Ask them. Knocks on the table. What's here and what's in their heads is the same thing. The people there are very incompetent, the Russian leader noted. Scholz, in turn, argued that with his statements Putin was ridiculing Russia's real actions in Ukraine. According to the Chancellor, during the interview an absurd story about the causes of the conflict was voiced. The German Chancellor insists that Moscow is seeking to annex part of Ukraine. The head of Germany did not specify which statements of the Russian leader he disagreed with.